Welcome to True Crime Cases, where we delve into the darkest corners of human nature. Today's episode unravels a tale of soldier's secret gay love affair with fellow officer ends in grisly murder. A chilling discovery in the early hours of September 16, 2022, shattered the facade of order and discipline that had long defined this bastion of American military might. The body of Captain Michael Thornton, a decorated Army officer with an impeccable service record, was found in his off-base apartment, the victim of a brutal and seemingly personal attack. This grisly murder would unravel a complex web of secrets, exposing the hidden pressures and silent struggles faced by those sworn to defend their nation. Captain Michael Thornton, 32, stood as the epitome of a model soldier. At 6'2", with piercing blue eyes and a commanding presence, he cut an impressive figure in his uniform. His record spoke of bravery and leadership, having served 2 tours in Afghanistan and earning multiple commendations. To his fellow officers, subordinates, and the civilian community of Fayetteville that bordered the base, Thornton represented the best of what the military had to offer: dedicated, disciplined, and destined for greatness within the ranks. But beneath this carefully cultivated image lay a secret that had tormented Thornton for years. Despite being married to his high school sweetheart, Lisa, with whom he had 2 young children, Emma, 7, and Elijah, 5. Thornton had long grappled with his sexual identity. Pressure to conform to the heteronormative expectations of military culture and his conservative upbringing in rural Georgia had forced him to suppress his true self, leading to years of internal conflict and silent suffering. The roots of Thornton's struggle traced back to his youth in the small town of Macon, Georgia. Raised in a deeply religious family, he had been taught from an early age that homosexuality was a sin, a belief reinforced by the conservative community around him. As a teenager, Thornton had pushed down his feelings, throwing himself into sports, academics, and eventually the military, hoping that by excelling in these traditionally masculine pursuits, he could somehow change who he was. His marriage to Lisa, his high school girlfriend, had seemed like the natural next step, a way to prove to himself and others that he was normal. Lisa, a sweet-natured woman with a heart of gold, had been his best friend for years. He loved her, in his way, and convinced himself that this would be enough. The birth of their children had brought joy into his life, but also deepened his sense of guilt and conflict. Joining the Army had initially seemed like the perfect solution to Thornton's internal struggles: the structured environment, focus on duty and service, camaraderie with fellow soldiers. All of these offered a distraction from his conflicted feelings. For years, he had managed to compartmentalize his emotions, channeling all his energy into being the best soldier he could be. It wasn't until Thornton met First Lieutenant Anthony Reeves during a joint training exercise at Fort Bragg that the carefully constructed walls he had built around his heart began to crumble. Reeves, 28, was everything Thornton aspired to be: confident, charismatic, and seemingly at ease with himself. Like Thornton, Reeves was a rising star in the military, known for his tactical acumen and leadership skill. Their initial interactions were purely professional, centered around the training exercise they were both participating in. But as the days wore on, Thornton found himself drawn to Reeves in a way he had never experienced before. It wasn't just physical attraction, though that was certainly part of it. There was a sense of kinship, a feeling that perhaps for the first time in his life, he had met someone who truly understood him. As the training exercise concluded, Thornton and Reeves found reasons to stay in touch. What began as occasional texts about work-related matters slowly evolved into deeper conversation. Late-night chats about their childhoods, their hopes for the future, and the pressures they felt as young officers trying to live up to the military's exacting standards became a regular occurrence. It was during one of these late-night conversations, nearly 6 months after they had first met, that Reeves confided in Thornton about his own sexuality. The revelation came not as a dramatic confession, but as a quiet acknowledgement of a shared struggle. Reeves spoke of his own journey of self-acceptance, challenges he faced in reconciling his identity with his career, and the constant fear of discovery. For Thornton, this moment was like a dam breaking. Years of repressed emotions and denied truths came flooding out, In Reeves, he found not just a potential romantic partner, but a mirror of his own experiences. The relief of finally being able to be honest about who he was, even if only with one person, was overwhelming. Their relationship deepened rapidly from that point, evolving from friendship to love, with an intensity that both exhilarated and terrified them. They were acutely aware of the risks they were taking. Despite the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell in 2011, the reality on the ground was far from accepting. Both men knew that if their relationship was exposed, it could mean the end of their careers, the loss of their families, and social ostracism. This fear of discovery shaped every aspect of their relationship. Their meetings were carefully planned and executed with military precision. They would rendezvous in secluded spots around the vast Fort Bragg complex, in anonymous hotel rooms in nearby Fayetteville, or during conveniently timed training exercises that allowed them to be alone together. Every text, every phone call, every shared glance in public was weighed against the potential for exposure. The stress of maintaining this secret took its toll on both men, but particularly on Thornton. Contrast between the joy he felt when he was with Reeves and the guilt that consumed him when he returned home to his family was becoming unbearable. Lisa, sensing the growing distance between them, tried repeatedly to bridge the gap. She organized date nights, family outings, and even suggested marriage counseling, all of which Thornton participated in with a sense of increasing desperation and self-loathing. As months passed, the web of lies and half-truths that Thornton had woven began to fray at the edges. Suspicious glances from fellow officers, hushed whispers among the enlisted men, and the growing strain on his marriage all threatened to expose his carefully guarded secret. Pressure began to take its toll, manifesting in mood swings, insomnia, and a growing sense of paranoia. It was Sergeant Lisa Martinez who first noticed the marked change in Captain Thornton's demeanor. A perceptive and empathetic leader, Martinez had always admired Thornton's leadership style and commitment to his troops, but in the weeks leading up to his death, she observed a troubling transformation. The once confident and composed officer now seemed distracted, irritable, and uncharacteristically withdrawn. Concerned for her superior officer and friend, Martinez attempted to discuss her observations with Thornton. She approached him after a staff meeting, asking if everything was all right and if there was anything she could do to help. Thornton, his guard up, brushed off her concerns with a forced smile and a vague reference to stress from an upcoming deployment. But Martinez wasn't convinced, and her well-intentioned concern would unknowingly set in motion a chain of events that would culminate in tragedy. Martinez's observations, shared in passing with other officers, added fuel to the rumors already circulating about Thornton's personal life. The whispers grew louder, the scrutiny more intense, and the pressure on both Thornton and Reeves reached a breaking point. As the walls began to close in around them, Thornton and Reeves found themselves at odds over how to proceed. Reeves, having come to terms with his sexuality years earlier, argued for openness. He believed that living authentically, despite the potential consequences, was preferable to the constant fear and deception that defined their current situation. Thornton, however, couldn't bring himself to take that step. The thought of disappointing his family, of becoming a source of shame for his parents and confusion for his children, was more than he could bear. Their disagreement came to a head on the night of September 15, 2022. Reeves, frustrated by what he saw as Thornton's cowardice, and increasingly convinced that exposure was inevitable, decided to end their relationship. He went to Thornton's off-base apartment, determined to make a clean break and salvage what he could of his career and personal life. The conversation that ensued was heated from the start. Neighbors in Thornton's apartment complex would later report hearing raised voices and the sound of breaking glass. The argument, fueled by years of pent-up frustration, fear, and resentment, quickly escalated beyond either man's control. Thornton, faced with the prospect of losing the one person who truly understood him, became desperate. In a moment of panic, he threatened to expose their relationship himself, arguing that if they were going to lose everything anyway, they might as well do it on their own terms. For Reeves, whose entire identity and future were tied to his military career, This threat represented the destruction of everything he had worked for. What happened next occurred in a blur of emotion and adrenaline. Reeves, acting on instinct and blind panic, grabbed a kitchen knife and lashed out. The violence of the act, so at odds with the love they had shared, left both men in shock. Thornton, bleeding heavily from multiple stab wounds, collapsed to the floor. Reeves, the reality of what he had done crashing down upon him, fled the scene in terror, discarding the bloody knife in a nearby dumpster. The discovery of Captain Michael Thornton's body the next morning sent shockwaves through Fort Bragg. The military police, led by Chief Investigator Sandra Ramirez, quickly cordoned off the scene. As news of Thornton's violent death spread across the base, a pall of shock and disbelief settled over the tight-knit military community. The investigation that followed would peel back the layers of secrecy and lies that had shrouded Thornton's life, exposing vulnerabilities in the military's culture and policies that many had preferred to ignore. Chief Investigator Ramirez, a seasoned officer with a reputation for thoroughness and discretion, knew from the outset that this case would be unlike any she had handled before. The crime scene itself painted a gruesome picture. Thornton's apartment, usually kept in impeccable military order, was in disarray. Broken furniture and shattered picture frames spoke of a violent struggle. Blood spatter analysis would later confirm that the attack had been frenzied and personal, suggesting a crime of passion rather than a random act of violence. As Ramirez and her team began to dig into Thornton's life, they encountered a wall of silence from many of his colleagues. Whether out of loyalty to their fallen comrade or fear of what might be uncovered, many were reluctant to speak openly about Thornton's personal life. This code of silence, while frustrating for the investigators, also hinted at the possibility that Thornton's secrets were not entirely unknown to those around him. The breakthrough in the case came from an unexpected source. John Sarge Thompson, a homeless veteran who often slept in the wooded area behind Thornton's apartment complex, came forward with crucial information. Thompson, initially hesitant to get involved, described seeing a man matching Reeves's description entering Thornton's apartment on the night of the murder. He recalled hearing raised voices and what sounded like a physical altercation before the man hurriedly left, his clothes disheveled and his hands appearing to be covered in blood. This eyewitness account, combined with forensic evidence from the scene and cell phone records placing Reeves in the vicinity at the time of the murder, led to the first lieutenant's arrest. The military community, already reeling from Thornton's death, was further shocked by the revelation that his killer was a fellow officer. As the case moved towards trial, the case of Thornton and Reeves's secret relationship began to emerge. The discovery of a hidden burner phone containing hundreds of text messages between the two men left little doubt about the nature of their relationship. These messages, filled with expressions of love, fear, and increasing desperation, painted a poignant picture of two men trapped by societal expectations and their own conflicted feeling. Trial of First Lieutenant Anthony Reeves was a media sensation, drawing attention from across the country. It was more than just a murder case. It became a focal point for discussions about LGBTQ+ rights in the military, culture of masculinity in armed forces, and the psychological toll of living a double life. The prosecution, led by the formidable military prosecutor Major Elena Valdez, painted Reeves as a cold-blooded killer who had taken a life to protect his own interests. They emphasized the brutality of the attack and Reeves' attempts to cover up his crime. Valdez argued that regardless of the nature of their relationship, Reeves's actions were those of a calculating murderer, not a man acting in the heat of passion. The defense team, headed by civilian attorney Robert Greenwood, known for his work on high-profile military cases, took a different approach. While not denying Reeves's actions, they argued for leniency based on the immense psychological pressure he had been under. They presented expert testimony on the mental health impacts of living a double life and the fear of discrimination that many day service members still faced. Reeves himself took the stand, his testimony providing some of the most dramatic moments of the trial. He spoke of his relationship with Thornton, their shared struggles, and the events that led to that fateful night. His description of the final argument, Fear and desperation that drove him to violence moved many in the courtroom to tears, even as he expressed deep remorse for his actions. Reeves spoke of the relief he felt at finally being able to live openly, even if it was behind bars. The trial also brought to light the broader issues facing LGBTQ+ service members. Despite the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, testimony from several witnesses highlighted the ongoing challenges and discrimination faced by gay soldiers. The case became a rallying point for activists pushing for further reforms and greater support for LGBTQ+ individuals in the military. After weeks of emotional testimony and legal arguments, the military court found Reeves guilty of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 25 years in military prison, a verdict that left both families feeling that justice had been served, brought little comfort or closure. In the aftermath of the trial, Fort Bragg and the larger military community were left to grapple with the implications of the case. The Army launched a comprehensive review of its policies and practices regarding LGBTQ+ service members, acknowledging that more needed to be done, create a truly inclusive environment. Support groups and counseling services were expanded, and training programs were implemented to promote understanding and acceptance among all ranks. For those who had known and served with Thornton and Reeves, the tragedy served as a stark reminder of the human cost of intolerance and the importance of creating a culture where all service members could be true to themselves without fear of reprisal. Many spoke of the guilt they felt for not recognizing the signs of their colleagues' struggles or for contributing, however unintentionally, to an atmosphere that had made them feel they couldn't be open about their relationship. Sergeant Lisa Martinez, whose initial concerns had inadvertently contributed to the pressure on Thornton, became an outspoken advocate for change within the military. She channeled her guilt and grief into action, working to establish support networks for LGBTQ service members and their allies. Her efforts, born from tragedy, would go on to positively impact the lives of countless soldiers struggling with similar issues. The families of both Thornton and Reeves were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. Lisa Thornton, suddenly a widow and single mother, struggled to reconcile the man she thought she knew with the secret life he had been leading. In a poignant statement to the press, she spoke of her anger at the deception, but also of her sadness for the pain and fear that had driven her husband to live a lie. Reeves' parents, conservative Christians from a small town in Alabama, were equally devastated. Their son, once the pride of their community, now stood convicted of a brutal crime, challenged everything they believed about him and about the world. Their public struggle to understand and come to terms with their son's actions became a microcosm of the larger societal reckoning taking place. As the years passed, the impact of the case continued to resonate at Fort Bragg and military bases across the country. Small but significant changes began to take root. Rainbow flags appeared alongside unit insignias in some offices, a quiet symbol of solidarity and acceptance. LGBTQ+ support groups, once operating in the shadows, began to meet openly, providing a crucial lifeline for service members struggling with their identity. The case of Michael Thornton and Anthony Reeves became more than just a sensational crime. It became a catalyst for change and a poignant reminder of the work still to be done in creating a truly equal and accepting society. Their tragic love affair, born in secrecy and ended in violence, forced many to confront their own biases and assumptions about what it means to serve one's country while being true to oneself. In an unexpected turn of events, the families of both Thornton and Reeves, once divided by tragedy, found a connection in their shared grief and desire for change. Lisa Thornton and Reeves' parents, overcoming their initial animosity, began working together to promote understanding and acceptance in military community. Their joint speaking engagements at bases and veterans organizations across the country put a human face on the cost of discrimination and the importance of creating an inclusive environment for all who choose to serve. Their unlikely alliance became a powerful symbol of reconciliation and progress. At one particularly moving event at Fort Hood, Texas, Lisa stood hand in hand with Reeves's mother, Linda, as they addressed a packed auditorium of soldiers and their families. Lisa spoke of the pain of betrayal but also of the greater tragedy of a society that had forced her husband to live a lie. Linda, her voice trembling with emotion, shared her journey from confusion and anger to understanding and advocacy for LGBTQ+ rights. Impact of their partnership extended beyond the military. In Thornton's hometown of Macon, Georgia, and Reeves in Montgomery, Alabama, local LGBTQ+ groups reported an increase in support and visibility. People who had been moved by the tragic case began to reconsider their attitudes and stand up against discrimination in their community. As the 5th anniversary of Thornton's death approached, Fort Bragg, now known as Fort Liberty, following the military's renaming initiative, prepared for a memorial service that would honor not just the life lost, the changes sparked by the tragedy. The base, once the site of secrets and fear, become a leader in LGBTQ+ inclusion within the military, a transformation that served as a testament to the enduring impact of Thornton and Reeves's case. The memorial, attended by military personnel, family members, and advocates from across the country, was a solemn yet hopeful affair. The ceremony opened with a color guard presentation, crisp movements of the soldiers, a reminder of the discipline and dedication that defined military service. As the national anthem played, many in attendance reflected on the complex relationship between patriotism, service, and personal identity Thornton Reeves' case had brought to the forefront. Major General Laura Richardson, commanding officer of Fort Liberty, delivered a powerful opening address. She spoke of the progress made in the years since the tragedy, highlighting the policy changes and cultural shifts that had taken place. The strength of our military lies not in uniformity, she declared, but in our ability to embrace diversity in all its forms. Captain Thornton and Lieutenant Reeves, in their struggle and through their tragedy, have taught us that lesson at great cost. Lisa Thornton, now remarried but still carrying the name of her late husband, at the podium next. The years had softened the raw edges of her grief, placing it with a determined advocacy for change. She spoke of Michael not as a symbol, but as a man, flawed, complex, and ultimately tragic in his inability to reconcile his duty with his true self. Her words served as a powerful reminder of the human cost of intolerance. Anthony Reeves, appearing via video link from the military prison, where he continued to serve his sentence, offered a message of remorse and hope. His face, lined with the weight of his actions and the years of incarceration, still carried echoes of the charismatic young officer he had once been. He spoke of the terrible consequences of fear and self-hatred, urging those still struggling in silence to seek help and acceptance. The most poignant moment of the ceremony came with the unveiling of a memorial plaque. Situated in a quiet corner of the base, it was dedicated not just to Michael Thornton, but to all service members who had suffered in silence. The inscription read, "In memory of those who served with honor, loved in secret, and dreamed of a day when all could be free to be themselves." As the ceremony concluded and the attendees dispersed into the warm North Carolina evening, there was a sense that while the pain of the past could never be erased, the legacy of Michael Thornton and Anthony Reeves had become one of positive change. Their tragic case, once a source of shock and scandal, had transformed into a powerful reminder of the strength found in acceptance and the ongoing journey toward true equality. In the years that followed, the impact of the Thornton Reeves case continued to ripple through American society. The military, often seen as a conservative institution resistant to change, became an unexpected leader in LGBTQ+ inclusion. The comprehensive review initiated in the wake of the tragedy led to sweeping policy changes, including enhanced sensitivity training, clearer anti-discrimination guidelines, and improved support services for LGBT service members and their families. These changes were not without controversy. Conservative politicians and traditional military families argued that the new policies would undermine unit cohesion and military readiness. However, studies conducted in the years following the implementation of these changes showed no negative impact on military effectiveness. Instead, they revealed increased job satisfaction and improved mental health outcomes among LGBTQ+ service members. The case of Thornton and Reeves also made its way into popular culture, becoming the subject of books, documentaries, and even a critically acclaimed feature film. These portrayals help to humanize the issues faced by LGBTQ+ individuals in the military, fostering greater understanding and empathy among the general public. In academic circles, the case became a frequent topic of study in fields ranging from sociology and psychology to law and gender studies. Researchers examined the complex interplay of societal expectations, institutional policies, and individual psychology that had led to the tragedy. Their findings contributed to a growing body of knowledge on the importance of inclusive policies and the psychological toll of living in the closet. 10 years after Thornton's death, a landmark lawsuit citing the Thornton-Reeves case as precedent led to further expansions of rights and protections for LGBTQ+ service members. The suit, brought by a coalition of LGBTQ+ advocacy groups and individual service members, challenged remaining discriminatory policies and practices within the military. The resulting legal decision affirmed the right of LGBTQ+ service members to serve openly and without fear of discrimination, cementing the changes that had begun in the wake of the tragedy. On the personal level, the lives touched by the case continue to evolve. Lisa Thornton, remarried, and with a blended family that included her children with Michael, became a respected voice in the ongoing national conversation about LGBTQ+ rights. She wrote a memoir that topped bestseller lists, using her platform to advocate for greater understanding and acceptance. The Reeves family, once pillars of their conservative community, underwent a profound transformation. Linda and Robert Reeves became unlikely allies in the fight for LGBTQ+ rights, using their case to challenge preconceptions in conservative Christian circles. Their journey from rejection to acceptance of their son's sexuality became a powerful testimony to the possibility of change, even in the most traditional environments. Anthony Reeves, while still serving his sentence, found purpose in advocating for prison reform and LGBTQ+ rights from behind bars. He completed a degree in psychology through a prison education program and began counseling fellow inmates struggling with issues of sexuality and identity. His journey from closeted officer to convicted murderer, advocate and counselor was a complex one, reflecting the multifaceted nature of the issues at the heart of the case. As for Fort Liberty, the base continued to evolve. A memorial to Thornton and other service members who had suffered in silence became a place of pilgrimage for soldiers and civilians alike. It served as a quiet reminder of the progress made and the work still to be done. The base instituted an annual Diversity and Inclusion Week, featuring speakers, workshops, and events designed to foster understanding and celebrate the varied backgrounds of its personnel. In a poignant twist of fate, 15 years after the tragedy, Emma Thornton, Michael's daughter, enlisted in the Army. Now a confident young woman, she spoke openly about her father's case and her own journey to understand and forgive. Her enlistment ceremony, attended by Lisa, her stepfather, and even Linda and Robert Reeves, was a powerful symbol of healing and hope. Future. As Emma raised her hand to take the oath of enlistment, those present couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed. The army she was joining was markedly different from the one her father had served in, more open, more inclusive, and more aware of the diverse needs of its members. While challenges remained, there was a sense that the sacrifices of the past had paved the way for a better future. The legacy of Michael Thornton and Anthony Reeves, a case that began in secrecy and ended in tragedy, had transformed into a catalyst for change, understanding, and hope. Their tale, once a source of shame and scandal, had become a testament to the power of truth and the ongoing journey toward a more just and inclusive society. As the sun set on Fort Liberty, casting long shadows across the parade grounds where Thornton and Reeves had once stood proud in formation, there was a sense that their case, though ended in tragedy, had opened a new chapter in the ongoing struggle for equality and acceptance. In death, they had achieved a kind of freedom and openness that had eluded them in life, their legacy living on in the changed hearts and minds of those they left behind. The tale of the secret love affair that ended in tragedy at Fort Bragg would be remembered not just for its shocking conclusion, but for the waves of compassion, understanding, and progress flowed from. It stood as a poignant reminder of the cost of silence, power of truth, and the enduring human capacity for growth and change. Thank you for following this emotional case about the hidden secrets in the life of a soldier. We hope that the case of Captain Michael Thornton and First Lieutenant Anthony Reeves has evoked empathy in you and provided a deeper understanding of the struggles soldiers face when they cannot live true to themselves. If you found this content meaningful, don't forget to like and share it with your friends to help spread this case. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our next videos, where we will continue to bring you more touching, profound story. See you in the upcoming video.